today's panel, and I'll be presenting on McGill University's virtual simulation of a mineral and chemical processor. This project was helped out by Dr. Nassim Razvinia, who is back in Montreal. I guess on that note, it's important to mention I'm also American working at a university in another country. But yes, so Dr. Nassim Razvinia was the professor that got the grant and also works on being sort of the ambassador of getting professors involved in this project. And then I work on more of the development side, Unity development, as well as working with a lot of the instructional designers on creating these projects. We wanted to create a way for students to be able to visit a mineral processor, a chemical plant, without actually having to physically visit one in person, because there is a company, Agnico Eagle, that takes a lot of co-op students from McGill University, and they, a lot of students would show up as operators there, as interns, and they would not have just basic experience on the safety, or they maybe had never visited beforehand, just because a lot of their mines are maybe a 2-hour flight away in northern Quebec, or like a 7-hour bus ride away. There's another one in Ontario. None of them are particularly close, so it's not particularly easy for students or financially cost-effective for students to visit prior to actually working in the mineral processor or the chemical plant. So we had created 2 different plants. One was that mineral processor from Agnico Eagle. Another was a chemical plant. Due to copyright constraints, I won't be showing the specific chemical plant, but I will be showing sort of a tour of the mineral processor later. We had a discussion with my colleague, Dr. Navarra, who works as a professor and also on educational pedagogy, and he gave some tips he gave some ideas as to the importance of being able to have these sort of virtual classrooms. Can help students sort of visualize these complex processes. It can prepare students for field trips and internships, as mentioned earlier, and just bridge the gap between theory, seeing somebody seeing a professor give a slideshow on a topic versus actually seeing it. And then, of course, the training and operational readiness. Students can be prepared for emergency scenarios, can be prepared for safety and other things before they actually visit these plants. So to talk about kind of some of the work I did, I was the developer of the project. I had worked in Unity, but before I had done that, I had visited a mineral processor, Agnico Eagle's Laurent mine in Rouyn-Noranda, Quebec. It's about a 2-hour flight north of Montreal up into sort of like the snowy wilderness of Canada. I received a facility tour, a process description, and the facility had also provided some photos of the equipment that they were allowed to share. For the CLO2 chemical plant, I had not visited anyone specific, but the professor that I worked with, Dr. Peters, had access to orthographic and detailed 3D drawings of the entire inner workings of a chemical plant, and the models created in Autodesk Maya that were ported into Unity were created based off these orthographic drawings. And also custom piping systems were designed with the supervision of this professor in order to show sort of the flow of how one of these chemical plants works. One machine gives, say, chilled water to another machine, which gives ClO2 to another machine, and the whole process. This would both be allowing the students to see the flow of how the chemical plant works, and also for a project that his specific course has, which is actually designing a chemical plant themselves. They can use the VR plant as sort of a springboard to be able to see to be able to like get an idea for how to design one of these plants. For model creation and collection, many complex models were purchased from 3D model databases such as GrabCAD, which is a very engineering-focused database. The challenge with that one is that a lot of those models are not specific to Unity, which is more of a game design engine, so it has a lot more art-focused models, so a lot of them had to be ported into a different format for them to work in Unity, as well as TurboSquid, which generally has more art-focused models, but Those ones are very easy to port directly into Unity. And then simpler models were created by me in Autodesk Maya, which is a 3D modeling software. Yes, so as mentioned, the 3D models were imported into Unity to be animated and placed in the proper layout. And then from there, all of the interactions with these 3D models could be programmed from the first-person controller, so the student can sort of move around the virtual world. We had both two different ways of moving around the virtual world, VR controls and a first-person controller with a mouse and keyboard. We originally had planned for the VR version as a starting point. Students are able to go into the lab, and we have access to two headsets, so two at a time. Students would be able to go into our computer lab, put on the VR headset, and be able to move around in a virtual world. A lot of students say that's a bit more immersive, but of course, we also want the ability for students who either aren't able to come onto campus, they they do online learning. They still wanted the ability to be able to visit this virtual world, so we also have a keyboard and mouse version in which students can download the project onto their own devices, and without a VR headset available can still view it on their monitor and be able to interact that way. Yes, so other things like object interaction and menus, as well as some knowledge-based questions that we programmed into the Unity scene and a guided tour were all programmed in Unity. So to give sort of a demonstration of the virtual project, wait, this is gonna make noise, isn't it? Can I stop it from making loud noise? Maybe it won't. Okay. Cool. All right, so yeah, so the student is ported into the Unity scene. This is, of course, the keyboard and mouse version. I don't have the ability to bring down the VR headset from Montreal to here, but the student can move around using the mouse. They can look around using the arrow keys, or W, A, S, and D. They can move their character around, and they can select different menu items. As we are in Montreal, which is a bilingual city, we have the UI menus in both English and French. And yes, so the student gets sort of a guided tour. It gives them a basic introduction of what they're going to learn, basic safety protocols, and how the flow of the machines function. The student is given an option. I'm going to select the guided tour. And the rest is sort of the best of my ability, a one-to-one replica of what we had seen in the actual mineral processor, where students, where I guess when I went on the guided tour, had started out going through a turnstile to register, and then had gone into the safety and PPE room. In this scene, you're able to pick up the items, and when you let go of them, they're automatically equipped to you. In future versions, we'd like to add sort of a third-person ability so that the student can kind of, if possible, even create their avatar or just see their avatar that is actually donning the PPE onto their virtual avatar. But as for the moment, it just tells you through text that you've equipped the object, you've equipped the hard hat and the safety goggles, and once all of these requirements are satisfied, you're able to go into this room where you meet sort of this guy who's kind of your virtual tour guide. And then you follow him around, and different UI menus pop up, essentially giving the information that he wants to tell you. In here as well, there's sort of a control room. I can skip ahead over here where you can kind of see there are different actual videos of what we had seen in the mineral processor. This was sort of a frothing machine where the minerals that the operators do want float to the top, whereas like the waste rock and everything else floats to the bottom. There were a lot of videos of that when we were in the control room so that they could monitor and make sure that the machines are working properly. So we also have these knowledge-based questions. Students can read them and click on the correct answer. This could also be ported to an LMS. where after answering all these knowledge-based questions, it would send a report to the LMS. Go uses my courses, and it would send a report of just like how many questions were answered, how much they got right, and also how much time they spent. If a teacher wants them to spend a specific amount of time in the virtual facility, that can also be sent to the LMS as well. One other thing I wanted to show is that transparency can be turned on to some of these models, so you can kind of see inside the inner workings of them. This one just kind of takes steel balls and crushes rocks into sort of a finer powder. And then this one does a very similar thing, just the rocks that come in at first are a lot bigger. They tend to start out in this and move to this. And I guess the general goal of the mineral processor through the flow is to take a big rock and separate, the pieces of gold, the pieces of copper, what they want, and separating it out from just the waste rock, the tailings, the stuff that is not necessary. Yes. So it looks like I have 3 minutes left, so I'll talk a bit about the possible expansions. In addition to the ones I've written here, throughout the 2 days I've been here, I've talked to some people working on similar projects, so I have a lot of new ideas now. But what would be nice is the ability to add sim-to-real changes, which essentially a student could interact with an object in the virtual world and it would affect anything down the line. Like if you were to say, turn off the conveyor belt that moves the rocks into one of the mills, it would then affect everything down the line, because then there would be no feed of minerals going forward. Multiplayer functionality, which turns out is very difficult to program, but so that students could, rather than each individually having their own instance of the world, could have like their two different avatars both interacting at the same time. So that's something we want to add. Yes, in addition, we wanted to add just sort of the ability to export some more things to the LMS so that students, so that professors would be able to like see other things about how the students interacted with the world, get a lot of data through that.